You are live there. You ready?
Yeah. There we go. All right. Hey, hello everybody. Good evening. How are you? Good? Yeah? All right. My name is Joe Snyder. I am a founder of what I call the Western New York Bigfoot Investigation Group. It started out as Western New York Bigfoot Research Organization, but after several years I got tired of the acronym Whiny Bro. And so I changed it to WNYBIG. It's a subtle distinction, but it's an important one. No. My friend with me is Mike Ann from Tactical Bigfoot Research. He has his own organization and we collaborate when we can. And so we're going to give a presentation on Bigfoot. Now you saw on the bill, probably, there was 2 questions on the bill advertising this lecture. And that was, is Bigfoot real? Is Bigfoot in New York? Well, for myself, I can say I didn't come here tonight and bring you empirical evidence that either one of those questions is yes. But what I can do is share something with you that explains why I say that, yeah, Bigfoot's real and they're in New York. Now, I don't know how many there are. I know very little about Bigfoot, to tell you the truth, except for what one looks like. Now, I tend to call it Hominin X, because I am of firm belief that right now, even though we have some people that are dedicated to actually trying to find real answers to this whole phenomenon, we don't really know what they are. We know that it's a large, hairy hominin of some sort. Is everybody familiar with the term hominin? Basically, yeah, it just explains every upright walking primate, basically. All the fossils that they've found of all the different human genuses, they're all hominins because we walk bipedally. For all intents and purposes, I think that's what Bigfoot has to be. And I did actually run across one. Now, I've been interested in this since I was 14 years old. And it's been a really interesting hobby for a very long time. When I was a child, I found well, today I even can't be sure, but what started me was a footprint that I'd found alongside a creek that, well, either A, it had to be that big hairy hominin that left that thing, or it had to be a huge flat-footed person, which, you know, you always have to go with that maybe. But I saw the Patterson film. Everybody's familiar with the Patterson-Gimlin film, Patty, the Bigfoot in California. Yeah, I saw that film, and then it made me think about that footprint that I'd found. And I was like, could these things be in New York? And so that started me out. So ever since I was 14, I've read everything I could, researched everything I could about the whole phenomenon. And it wasn't until 3 years ago where I actually had at least one part of it confirmed for myself. And that's when I was walking out on a trail in Allegheny County in a little area that I was told that people had heard some strange things and seen some strange stuff. So I thought, well, I'll investigate that. And I started camping out there. And about 3 years ago, it was August of 2020, I went out there just on a day trip because I was looking around. I found some they could have been footprints. Couldn't be 100% definitive about it. They were large. There wasn't a lot of detail to them. So I casted one that I could. I was right. Not a whole lot of detail came out. It looks like a big blob of plaster of Paris in the shape of a big foot, but no other detail to it. Now, while I was doing that, I had left a walking stick leaning against a tree out there. And I bring visual aids sometimes. So this Hey, now, I swear I'm just drinking iced tea. This is the walking stick. And I left it leaning against a tree out there. Didn't realize it until I was halfway home. Well, about a week later, when I had the chance, I thought, well, I'm going to go back out and I'm going to get that walking stick. Because I knew exactly where it was, and I knew that nobody was going to find it. I knew absolutely that that walking stick could still be leaning against that tree. And as I was walking down this trail after I parked my Jeep, I was walking down this trail, excuse me, into the woods, and I'm making a lot of noise. I mean, obviously, look at me. I'm old, I'm fat. I don't move silently through the woods. I'm making a lot of noise. And as I'm walking down this trail, I get to this one tree that I knew that I was going to have to make a slight adjustment to my direction and go in off to my right towards where this was leaning against a tree. And as I'm walking down, about 15 to 20 feet in front of me was a deer. And that deer was laying in really tall grass, ferns, was what this game trail was all overgrown with. And I know that I was looking right at that deer and did not see it laying there. And as soon as I took one more step forward, that was when the deer decided, nope, that's close enough, I'm out of here. And it burst up out of that grass, ran to the left. I jumped back, wasn't expecting it because I was like, where did that come from? I was looking right at it, didn't see it. As soon as that happened, I heard these screams from my right. And I snapped my head to the right, and as soon as I did, I saw what was standing there, and I went, whoa, big fella. I'm not here to F up your day. And I started to retreat just a little bit, 3 steps, hoping that it wasn't going to move. And I made a hasty retreat out of there. Now, I said I'd bring visual aids. There's a picture right here. This is a sketch that a good friend of mine did from my description of what I saw. And I ended up naming him Rasta. And there's a reason for that, a couple of reasons actually. I get tired of saying that thing when describing it, so I gave it the word. But his hair, which was very long, looked like it was kind of in dreadlocks. Now, that could have been because the day was damp. It had been raining a lot that August. He could have been wet. But he looked very primitive. He looked a lot like what this sketch is. Now, this sketch isn't the same as looking exactly into that face, but it comes really close. And that is a hominin. And it was about 7.5 feet tall, I would judge, because it stood a good 18 inches taller than I do, and I'm 5'10". And it was massively wide. And as you can see by that picture, the hair on his head actually hung down to his shoulders, and he had some very deep set eyes because his brow ridge was very pronounced. I was obviously not looking at something that was a Homo sapien. I was looking at something that looks like it's a relict hominin, something that survived, that possibly could be a derivative or descended from the same common ancestor that we had with all the other great apes. And I know a lot of people want to argue that we're not apes. Yes, we are. The evidence is there. It shows it. But we're a certain species. And my whole quest now, which I call the Hominin X inquiry, because you want to call it Bigfoot, okay, fine, it's Bigfoot. It's got big feet, okay? You want to call it Bigfoot, you want to call it Sasquatch. The indigenous people had thousands, there were thousands, hundreds of names that they gave these creatures all across America. So you can call it what you want, Hominin X. I know that It's big. It lives very primitively. Has to be intelligent. Don't know how intelligent. I guess it was smart enough to realize that killing me was not a good idea. And I'm glad that it decided that, if that's what decision it was made. Because I sat in my Jeep for about 45 minutes after seeing that thing, not really believing what I just saw. Thinking to myself, man, there's no way. There's no way anybody's ever going to believe this. Not realizing also that I was sitting on my camera phone, which I had grabbed out of my Jeep before I left the Jeep and put it in my back pocket. Now, lots of people say, well, no picture, didn't happen. Okay, well, tell me that standing 40 feet away from you, you see this massive, hairy thing that's not supposed to exist, that was obviously stalking a deer, and you just chased away his McDonald's. You tell me you're going to have the wherewithal to go, hang on just a second there, guy. I'm going to get my phone out here and maybe give me a little smile so people will believe this. You're not going to think that way. The only thing I was thinking was, I want to get out of here alive. And this thing could obviously kill me very easily if it wanted to. So, yeah, empirical evidence, no, that's eyewitness evidence. There's lots of encounters out there that I have heard over the last 45 years of this. Some of them I believed, some of them I don't believe. But with that is part of the evidence that people don't consider. We have a lot of people like Mike and other groups out there that are honestly trying to fill the gap that science refuses to, for the most part. We have a few scientists that are delving into it and are interested in it, trying to show that, hey, there is this relic hominin still existing. We're not the only ones on the planet. But in general, most of science won't even consider this a topic. But we have people like that that are trying to fill that space, science, and doing it. And Mike, I do believe, has some really good ideas. The man thinks out of the box, and he has different ideas of how to catalog data, how to gather data. And I'm going to let him tell you about some of that stuff. And Mike, by incident, so far is the only one that's been out there to that spot. I took him out there to look at the exact spot that I saw that thing standing in. And he went out there and took a look at it. Yeah.
I apologize. I came in late. Are you taking questions now or at the end?
We'll take questions at the end, yeah. So, Mike, you want to
Slick in there quick. Guess you are a little taller than me, huh? Yeah, we'll get there. No, I'm going to make a mess of that if I try it. There we go. I'm Mike Gann, I'm founder of Tactical Bigfoot Research. Basically, I look at things a little outside the box. I'm a member of multiple different groups. NESRA, which is the Northeast Sasquatch Research Association. They've been around since the early 90s. They were featured on quite a few different shows, from Finding Bigfoot to Monster Quest and a few others. I'm also a member of Project Zoo Book. Project Zoo Book is a bunch of professionals, anthropologists, scientists, law enforcement, military folks, that because of their jobs generally stay behind the camera. They don't come out. I happen to be one of the faces out front trying to recruit those folks that work for major universities. And I'm also working to help some groups come out, including a Darby Alcott. He's a professor at North Carolina State University. They've just started a unknown hair DNA program for all those folks for all these years that said they had hair or other samples and we can't spend thousands of dollars on DNA. Well, the University of North Carolina, or excuse me, NC State University has decided to buck up, put the funds out there, so if you have samples, to go ahead and submit them. I have a background in archaeology and anthropology as well as criminal justice, and worked along intelligence sites for military and law enforcement for quite a few years. I'm also a member of Squatch Detective, Steve Culls. Steve's been around forever. He is a private investigator, forensic interviewer, and we go out a lot to debunk a lot of the videos and other information that is out there. Through my investigations and talking to folks, collect a lot of data. And that data has been passed along to other groups to turn around and help build larger databases for folks that are interested in seeing the sightings and stuff in New York State. There's some great apps that are out there. One through bfro.org, that's Matt Moneymaker's organization. Those are the guys from Finding Bigfoot. And then there's another one that's the Bigfoot Mapping Project. It's an app that you can put on your phone, and that is a GIS, so it's a global spatial database that has gone through and mapped everything else. You literally can go online, get on the map, and almost use it like Google Earth. And if you're in an area, kind of look where things are, look what those sightings are. And a friend of mine, Scott, put that app together. He's out of Texas, and it's probably one of the most comprehensive databases in the country. I've used it here in New York State. I've used it in Florida, and we've been using it across the country. I've even used it where it's worked better than Google Maps to turn around and find locations when we're out there. And it collects everything from weather data to colors to times of the day, and that data is so important for us to kind of collect. So when we go out and talk to a witness like Joe here, we can really look at what things are going on. From that, I talk to a lot of witnesses around the world on a daily basis about different cryptids and how they can collect and get their data together. So when we talk to somebody like Joe and he explains that he's had a sighting, I can, if he's miles and miles away, we just ironically live about 10 miles from each other and came across each other 4 hours from here in Whitehall, New York at an event. We can ask and say, hey, what colors are you working with? And if somebody tells me brown, what's brown to one person is brown to somebody else, what's gray to somebody is something different, I can say go to your local box store, get yourself some paint samples, and I can give Joe, as I can today, I can hand him a stack of paint samples and say, hey, can you go through and look at that and give me a definitive look at what your paint sample is? Or like I said, I had a witness that was up in Albany area, said I saw something, but it was gray, but it was brown, but it had a little white to him. I sent him down to Lowe's. He goes down, picks up his paint samples. I can go right into Lowe's and say, okay, this is the almond, this is the buttercup, this is whatever, the dark gray that we're going to pick from, and we can look, and we can take that data and we can keep it out there. Putting that data together is so important. Yep, so Joe's gone through and picked something. So as we got here, we've got a sample from Sherwin, and that is tricorn black. So I can pass those around, you know. But that's what I'm saying is, can everybody hear me if I just talk like this? Because sometimes I like microphones, sometimes I don't. But again, using good old-fashioned paint samples are a great way to turn around and talk to folks. Even if you're a deer hunter or a coyote hunter and say, hey, what colors did you see? You can go back and look at those different color phases. Just recently, in the last week and a half, I've been working with another investigator, and we had a report come out of Steuben County, and they said, hey, this is what we got, the color schemes. We told them what to look. When they sent the samples out, we were able to look at those paint samples in comparison, bless you, to what's going on. There's another thing that's out there for folks that really want to know if we're looking at things, are Pantone colors. So a natural color chart, these are industry colors that we can look at. So again, we can compare those colors, those greens and everything like that. And it kind of helps us too when we talk to somebody that might have some kind of visual issues, color blindness or something, to see what color they looked at, and then we can kind of comparison of what they're going to and look at what different shades. So some of the data that we're going out there. A lot of times we'll talk to folks and they'll talk about, well, there was a print and it disappeared. Well, depending on the substrate, in New York State, we have so many different types of substrate we've got. You get up the Adirondacks, some spots, you've got sand, then you're in a stone, then you're in some gravel, then you've got leaf litter. It's very important to figure out how to collect that data. I spent quite a few years as a search and recovery diver, and what we do a lot with search and recovery is we call circle searches. I'm going to lose Joe's stick there. And basically what we do is we pick a fixed point, and we do a circle. So if I hand that to Joe, and Joe's my fixed point where that footprint is, I can do a circle, and if I find something else over here, I will put a flag out. These are fancy ones from a friend that put things together. She does these really fancy ones. I do really cheap ones with duct tape and toothpicks. But my friend Emily did these little things after a conversation we had. But we put these little evidence markers out, and then we can start. And we document in a notebook. But it's so important, and then getting measurements. So a lot of folks go out and find something, and they put their shoe next to everything. Everybody's shoe's different. Our sizes are different. Find yourself a known object. Be it that Bic lighter, be it a dollar bill, something that we can go back and look at. But a big thing to carry, a lot of folks, good old-fashioned cloth tape measure. Doesn't make any noise. You're not scaring anything in the woods. It generally doesn't roll back on you and smack you in your fingers when you're there and your hands are cold. It's also cordage if you have to tie things up. You can also put a weight on the end, like I have with some of these other items, where you can put it up over a tree. So in Joe's case, where he took me out to his location, he puts me there, and I can go ahead and get a full measurement of where things are at. We can do circles to see where the game trails are and collect that data. And that data is going to go in and it gets compiled, and then we look if there's other sightings in the area by using some of those other maps. How many folks are from Livingston County? Got a couple? If you go back and look at the history of Livingston County written by Doty in 1876, he goes back to the original folks that were here, the indigenous tribes. They list a hairy human creature, a flying head, and a giant snake. This morning I went and this afternoon snuck over to the county museum and talked to the historians over there. If the folks from Leicester, there's the Leicester Leaper. There are quite a few different creatures that are listed in folklore in the area that you can find as long as you go back and look at those old newspapers. That stuff is here. Some of the earliest reports in New York State go back to Sackett's Harbor in the 1800s. So we go and we look at that thing. How many folks are familiar with the Whitehall events in the 70s? So in 1976, Whitehall, New York, a couple of kids are driving down a road. They see something run across the road. They spin down and find the local police officer sitting in town running radar. Telling him, hey, we just saw some creaky monster coming across the road. Well, he calls his dad, who's the local chief of police, and he says, send the Washington County Sheriff and state police, and I'm going up there. And they went up, and for a bunch of days there were multiple sightings by the local town folk as well as multiple law enforcement sightings that were documented. I have seen some of the police blotters from them from 1976. So I really look at a lot of those sightings and talk to a lot of witnesses to see what kind of data we're going to get. Have I had a sighting? I have not. But folks like Joe that have shared their sighting and taken me to the location. I have some friends that are special forces folks that have worked at different places around the world that have had sightings of different creatures. We go ahead and we document. We look at what those things are. If we look at the eye shine that's out there, we go back and everybody says, well, certain apes don't have eye shine. Humans don't have eye shine. But if we go back farther in the primate lineage and we look at small lorises and tarsiers, when you hit them, they get a red eye shine. Some of the head structures and color structures, again, we look at gibbons and some other things. So that's a big thing that we look at. I'm also out there to debunk. So these folks that are out there with, I heard a scream in the woods. And let me get my speaker up here and run it. It's on. That's good. So I'm going to start with an easy one. If I can get in the right app here. What's that? Close. Guess we're gonna have to put this up by the speaker here. Chickens. Do this right here.
Once in a while, been a lot of years.
What?
It sounds like pigs.
Nope.
My husband's snoring.
Husband snoring. It could be. Anybody else? It's an alligator bellow. A lot of times these TV shows will use alligator bellows when they're out there. We have to get to know our sounds when we're out there. We need to know what things are out there. You know, this is probably an easy one too.
I mean, donkey. Oh, that's Teddy. That's Teddy.
Okay. It could be. It's a donkey, correct. Okay. But a lot of times, the biggest one that everybody really confuses everything on. There we go.
Coyote.
Nope.
Wolf.
Nope. What do you got, sir? With the hat on there. Nope.
They do make some monkey-like sounds, though.
That's green horn owl.
I was gonna say an owl. Yep.
Wow.
So there's some apps that are out there that you can put on your phone if you're out there. One of them happens to be the Merlin Bird app. And I use that a lot in the woods. I use it when people send me recordings. It allows me to visually look at all the data that comes in. So I can look and see where those sounds are. I can go into another app, and the app I'm using right now is I Hunt Calls. There's 600 calls on there for different animals, everything from bison to zebra to alligators to coyotes, fox, squirrel, and I can visually look at how those sounds are. And if they're not coming out in that same range, we've got some folks that are acoustical scientists that we will send those sounds out for those folks to look at things underneath the spectrograph. So when somebody tells me I hear a scream or we hear that, that's what I get. As a kid, I volunteered at the zoo. Spent a lot of time with those great apes behind me, listening to those big things. So having some of those apps, having some of the stuff there, getting to know what your signs are. We see a lot of folks that turn around and put prints out. And those prints, I'm going to move your chair over here a bit, Joe. So a lot of times you'll get a lot of folks that'll put print out and they're like, oh, we really saw print, we think we got it. There's some great little guides that are out there that will help you with different animal tracks. There's also some wonderful ones that are out there on the trees and the other floral and fauna of New York State. It's good to know that stuff. It's good to have that data. But like Joe said, he went out and he turned around and he's got the plaster of Paris out there. You're messing around with plaster of Paris or dentist stone and you slap it in a hole. And how many people have mixed drywall or tried to fill a hole? It never goes where you want it to go. You never get it mixed. My friend Emily that did these flags, she talks about, hey, I'm out there, she's got this expensive Nalgene bottle, that's the best thing she's got. So she throws her drywall compound in there, start mixing up. Well, you know, there's a $30 Nalgene bottle out the window, carry a bucket. Well, the best thing we can do, scanning stuff is coming along so far. There are handheld scanners that are out there, but now with your iPhones and some of the higher Androids, you can put a 3D scanning app on. I've personally used the 3D scanning stuff where we've gone out, we thought we had a big cat print. And cats, they retract their claws. We got down there, we started scanning. I have a friend that I go out with because he's a biologist. We're usually doing some stuff for him for work at the same time, so it's kind of a twofold. Guy's out for a drive in the afternoon, chill out, campfire somewhere, or a couple of cigars, and we'll look at whatever project he's working on for some biology thing. But I learned from him using a 3D scanning app, we thought we had a big cat. But we're using a 3D scanning app, you could actually see where the nails were in it, just happened to be how that particular track went down. Now there are some casts that we've seen that have been 3D scanned, it's done with photopictometry. It will give you a nice in-depth photo, and I can show some folks some stuff later of just some boot prints and stuff that you can actually put in your computer and turn all different ways or 3D print those out. That data is very important. Jeff Meldrum, Idaho State University. He's a professor of anthropology. He's written a bunch of books. He's done the Legend Meat Science stuff. His specialty is on human locomotion as an anatomist and an anthropologist. And he has gone through and scanned. He's got one of the largest cast collections himself in Cliff Barrickman. And it's very important to collect that data. So when we look at spots like where Joe took us and we can look at that substrate, we can look for some of those items. How many hunters do I have in the audience? Any hunters? Going to? Semi? So when you go out and you look for those game trails, a lot of folks don't look for the game trails when they're out there in the woods. You're out for a hike, you don't pay attention, and there could be multiple game trails coming from different directions.
I was having some kind of hallucination all of a sudden that day, or I entered some kind of psychotic moment or something because the deer startled me. Well, I've had deer jump on me before, and I never saw a Sasquatch along with them. So nobody's going to convince me that I didn't see that thing. I saw exactly what it was. But yet you have to remain, as Mike was saying, objective about all of this. I'm not interested in Bigfoot stepped out of a portal. Well, actually, I am interested in that if you have the evidence for it, but I haven't seen any evidence for that. I'm not interested in Bigfoot mind spoke to me and told me all about its history and where it came from and that it's here to protect humankind and all kinds of stuff that you see online. Most of it is entertainment, and that's fine. There's plenty of Bigfoot entertainment. I've read all kinds of Bigfoot books, factual and fiction. One of the things I'd like to suggest is, and not to take away from Dr. Meldrum, who is one of the scientists that are on board with this, his book, Legend Meets Science, Sasquatch Legend Meets Science, very good book. One of the best books, if you're really interested in this phenomenon, in my opinion, my humble opinion, one of the best books is this one right here. And it is called The Discovery of the Sasquatch by Dr. John Bindernagel, who was a very well-known, at least in the scientific circle, wildlife biologist, who was absolutely now he never saw one himself, but he was firmly convinced that the animal existed, and he wrote this book on it, and this is one of the best scholarly books on this that I think anybody could read. So, are they here? Yeah. How many of them are there? I don't know. You know, I guess there's at least enough to keep up a breeding population, and occasionally people run into them, you know, when you're out in the woods. I've been able to debunk like almost every noise that I've heard. There's only one sound that I can say that I know for absolutely positively sure is a Sasquatch vocal, and that's that scream that I heard that day when I ran into that thing out there, Rasta, 3 years ago. I know that, and I haven't heard that sound since. But I've heard a lot of other noises which I can either debunk them as coyotes, fisher cats, bobcats, barred owls. Barred owls make some really weird noises. And I heard one time that I'd never heard this sound from a barred owl. And it sounded like something that like a monkey would make, a chimpanzee. And of course, then it was like confirmation bias. Sasquatch. Well, fortunately, I recorded it. I was able to get it on a recording, and I showed it to an owl expert. His name was Patrick. I think his first name is Patrick Quackenbush. He's an expert on owls. And I gave it to him, and he listened to it, and he said, yeah, what you got there is a juvenile barred owl, but you also have another species of owl that sounds off at the same time as that barred owl. It makes it sound like this one continuous sound. And yeah, I was kind of like, oh, damn. I was hoping it was Bigfoot. But it wasn't. It was an owl, you know. So, as Mike says, you try to familiarize yourself with the noises of the known animals in the forest. My wife and I heard a cougar one time, and this was out towards the Seneca Reservation, out in what's it called, Vandalia.
We're in the Adirondacks?
No, that was out in Vandalia, hon. We ended up sleeping in the car.
Oh, that's right.
Because we were in the tent and we were sleeping, and we heard this ungodly scream. I'd never heard this noise before in my life. Otherwise, I mean, if it had been a bobcat, I'd been, oh, that's a bobcat, or that's a fisher cat. Or sometimes foxes have a weird scream that they'll do too, screamy kind of bark. This didn't sound like anything I'd ever heard before in my life. Now, my mind didn't automatically go to Bigfoot, though. I'm pretty skeptical about most things. I require evidence for me to believe something is real. But my mind, and I don't tend to believe too heavily in the supernatural. But my mind instantly went to Banshee. And I could just picture this thing like coming out of the woods, like with a white gown and really long black stringy hair, and, you know. Found out later on it was a cougar scream. And I did that just by going online and searching for that sound. And I was able to find that exact sound that we heard. And I played it for Molly. I said, does that sound familiar? She said, that's the sound we heard. I said, well, that's a cougar. Because there's the video right there of the cougar making that noise. So it's really important. There's a lot of noises out there. Could some of the ones that have been recorded be Bigfoot? Sure, some of them could be. But you shouldn't automatically just assume that because, oh, I don't know what, I've never heard that before. It must be Bigfoot. Nah, check it out. Look online. Look at different sources to see if you can find what known animal. Because chances are, it's probably going to turn out to be a known animal, and you've just never heard it do that vocalization. I can't tell you that I know that Bigfoot's out there making a whole lot of noises. I know it made that one noise when it saw me, and I scared away that deer. It made that one noise. For all I know, they're out there using sign language instead of making a bunch of noises. But now I'm starting to ramble, Mike.
Question time.
So it is question time. So if anybody's got questions for me and Mike, just raise your hand and we'll take the questions.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just curious, I apologize, I came a little late. So is it Joe and Mike?
Joe and Mike, yes.
Hi. Joe,
Yeah.
Allegheny County, first of all, where is it that you saw had your encounter with this
Augusta, that was out in an area right near West Hominin.
West Palm? Okay.
Yep.
And I'm just, like, the way you described your response, that's what I mean. Like, wouldn't you say most people would have been, like, totally freaked out and screamed or whatever?
Hopefully we've imparted something to you that, you know, the next time you're out in the woods, just keep your eyes open, keep your ears open. And if something happens, then maybe you got a little bit more information of how you can investigate it and find out exactly what you're hearing and what you may be seeing. So, Mike, any last words?
Thanks, everybody, and just be skeptical. Thank you for coming out and joining us tonight. Again, you can find Joe. You can find me on YouTube as Where's My Sage or Tactical Bigfoot Research. But some people are asking about some good sites. Again, BFRO.org, the Bigfoot Mapping Project. Small Town Monsters. They put a great bunch of YouTube stuff and some videos. You'll even see me on some of that stuff. You can find them on Amazon and Tubi and all that. But take a look, and if you have something, we've got some great folks that we work with. We're out there, so appreciate it. Thank you, Teddy, for having us as well.
Put your weights down. Try to fish.
right now.
I got a question. What about if I had an experience? How do I get a hold of you? Yeah, I'd like to.